We are back with another episode of Different Strings, a guitar adjacent podcast, music that matters. 2 colons in one title, Andrew. Can life get any better? I say it cannot.
Do not bring me 3 colons.
3 colons, I think, is too much.
It's too right.
3 colons, I think, is too much.
It's overkill at that point. Get it together.
It is, absolutely.
Calm down, everyone.
And tonight, or today, depending on when our folks are listening to this, we're going to be talking about what I consider to be a classic album, but you picked this album.
I did.
So before we get into the album, please tell folks where they can find us on the internet.
differentstringspodcast.com, not colon, .com. This time it's a dot. And where you'll find all sorts of like goodies, like links to past episodes and blog posts and reviews, and yeah, you'll find some nonsense. There's a little bit. There's some shenanigans on there.
Shenanigans.
Antics.
All right. In this episode of Music That Matters, this is Andrew's turn to choose. And he picked a banger. I'm not gonna lie to you, ladies and gentlemen. Not only am I familiar with this album, but I love this album. So I feel like we can have a nice, lively, and mostly agreeable conversation about this album. So Andrew, hit us with it.
So, my friend, I've been listening to our past episodes. Is this a safe space for me to?
This is
to be
always
honest?
a safe space for us.
Okay. I don't like listening to myself at all. Okay. My voice is obnoxious to me and I disgust myself. However, I have been listening. I have been listening from time to time. I just want to see like how the pacing of the show is and like where I have room for improvement. And and I've noticed that I have a tendency to come on here and describe my Music That Matters albums as bangers where every song slaps.
Yeah, yes, you do.
Every time. And this time is no different. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you 1994's Dookie by Green Day, a banger if ever there was one, where
100%.
Absolutely every song slaps. Mic drop. I'm out. I have nothing else to say. Right.
I'm actually pulling it up on my computer so I can look at the names of the songs as we go along, because I have it right here on my computer.
All right. Do you have Dookie in vinyl?
E, F, G. No, I have it on CD.
Okay. All right.
I'm not that cool.
All right. So I picked Dookie by Green Day. Now, we probably lost half of our 27 listeners for a variety of reasons, some of which we won't discuss. But weirdly, as great as this album is, Green Day seems to be one of those bands that you either adore or despise. No one seems to be like in the middle with Green Day.
I don't think really. Yeah, no, I don't think. And I think a lot of that has to do with depending on your age. It has to do with this album.
Mm-hmm.
If you're old like us, and if you're young, it has to do with their more highly politicized attitude that they front to the public these days.
Wait a minute. A punk band got political?
I know. It's a shocker. It's a shocker.
Hard to believe. It is hard to believe. One would think that the Sex Pistols were anti-government. But anyway, like I was saying about this album, and only this album and nothing but this album, let's talk a little bit about Dookie, which is a playful term for poo-poos. This album went diamond.
How many copies is that?
It went
Diamond,
Neil
Andrew?
Diamond in the US and Canada. It went platinum in 11 countries and gold in 9 others. This album sold a few. Okay. To say this was a popular, good selling album would be like saying that Wes has a beard. Anyway, Dookie is Green Day's third studio album, not their first. It was not their debut album, like a lot of
No.
people think, but it is the album to put them on the map, as it
Yeah.
were.
Wasn't
So,
their debut, and it wasn't the follow-up.
nope, it was their third album. Released on February 1st, 1994. Think about what I'm saying. What was happening in music in 1994, Wes?
In 1994, grunge was just starting to get formulaic.
Grunge, formulaic, bingo. In other words, we had had the first wave of grunge, and now the copycats were coming out.
Yeah. In
Yeah,
huge numbers.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
The shadows of grunge.
yeah, that was what was happening. Every band that came out was trying to sound like one of the big four or five. Um, so this album marks Green Day's major label debut.
Right. So it wasn't their first album, but it was their first album on a major label.
Right. And because it was a major label, they finally got to work with a real producer. It was their first collaboration with Rob Cavallo, who they worked with almost all the way up until recently. Like since 94, they've been working with him
Yeah.
steadily. Okay.
Let's see. What label was that on? Reprise.
Yeah. So
Part of Warner. It's now owned by Warner Music Group.
yeah. Dookie was written mostly by Billy Joe Armstrong, the singer slash guitar player.
Yeah, that
and
makes
the
sense.
album heavily based around his personal experiences with things like ennui, anxiety, relationships, his own sexuality, things like that. Was, I think, a song written by the bass player about an abusive relationship, but I digress. My friend, 5 singles from this album.
From a
5
pop punk album.
on a pop punk.
5.
Pop punk. Long View. They're obviously probably the most popular song on the album.
That was the masturbation song, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was Basket Case, which
Anxiety.
was a re-recorded version of Welcome to Paradise, which was on a previous album. When I Come Around, their slower song.
Yeah, that's what passed for a ballad on this album.
Yeah, When I Come Around, still crunchy and like heavy power chords, and then a song called She. So let's talk about, as you mentioned, in 94, the grunge was becoming formulaic. We were being bombarded by the copycats, the shadows of grunge, if you will. And then this album hits, and it is an unapologetically punk album, depending on who you are, apparently. But I'll more on that later. It definitely was not grunge. Fast-paced, sawing power chords, like this was punk, man. And if you watched Green Day play and you saw their stage image, they were punk, man.
Yeah.
Stickers on their beat up instruments, fast, light, drummer had a 3-piece kit with, they just, Mike Dirnt with his punk hair. Dude.
Trey plays so fast.
He
plays so fast.
He does. They looked punk. They sounded punk. In fact, if you listen to dude, do you hear some surf in Trey's playing? I do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You listen to punk, it's fast surf music.
Yeah.
So this album is punk. However, it wasn't punk enough for their loyal fan base.
It wasn't punk enough for the punks.
No, the punks said, you done and sold out. You signed with a major. How dare you achieve your dreams of being successful with music?
Yeah. And how dare you get a song on the radio?
How dare? That's what happened.
Not just one song, 5 songs.
5 with this album. So yeah, they had 2 punk albums that were very garage, underground sounding, and they had a great following in the Cali area. And they were very popular for good reason. They're talented dudes, and naturally they got offered a record deal,
Yeah.
and they smartly accepted
Yeah.
because I'm sorry, but one of them was going to be dead from an overdose if they didn't. Billy Joe was not living his best life back then.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I remember reading somewhere that, Mike Dirnt came up with some of the bass lines while he was tripping on acid.
yeah, they were not living their best life. And but they were apparently half of their fans thought, well, you sold out.
Yeah.
But the 70 billion new fans were like, we'll take you.
Yeah. I looked
So
it up, Andrew. Diamond means your album sold 10 million copies.
mhm, Diamond,
10 million.
10 million.
And I only bought one.
Right. I only bought one. Platinum and they went diamond in the US and Canada. Okay.
Yeah.
Platinum in 11 countries and gold in 9 others.
Which is
So,
saying something for Canada, because I don't know if Canada has 10 million people.
oh my God. So people were buying multiple
We're
copies. Like, you got
yeah,
to hear this thing.
we're gonna get letters about that.
So, okay. Obviously a massive commercial success for them and
Yeah.
tons of positive critical acclaim. Like, gatekeeping aside from the punk community, this band was huge. Now, Green Day did in fact address that gatekeeping on their follow-up album Insomniac, which was much more aggressive, and there's lyrics on there that you can tell are like written for the people that were criticizing them. Like,
Yeah.
so it was very interesting. Anyway, so what was so good about this album? Well, for one, let's be clear. When it came out, I think helped them. I think
Yeah.
when it came out, music was depressing. It was starting to sound very, at least my opinion, I was growing up in the 90s, music was starting to get very samey.
Yeah.
Like, I get now, like, I get there's always that level. I know that probably happens today. But what was happening in 1994 was Pearl Jam hit it big, Nirvana hit it big, Soundgarden hit it big, Alice in Chains hit it big, and
Yeah.
then an STP hit it big, and every other band was trying to sound like one
One of
or
them. Yeah.
rated a combination of one of them, and they weren't doing a great job, and A&R people were hanging on to their jobs because the day of the A&R
By
guy,
signing those bands.
right, the day of the A&R guy is at this point back then was on its way out. People were
Yeah.
realizing once the internet happened, A&R artist relations was like, we don't need you anymore. Artists are
Yeah.
their own A&R, but they were holding on to their jobs. They were signing bands. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can't help but notice, Andrew, that Dookie doesn't sound like any of those albums, any of those bands. It
No,
sounds
it does not.
completely different.
It sounds fresh. It sounds exciting. It sounds fun. It's got risque lyrics. It's not about heroin and overdosing and suicide. It's about jacking
Well,
off and being bored. And it's about not wanting to do your homework. And dude, it's
yeah,
punk again,
it's punk again.
but it was real. Like, even though Green Day sold out, he said in air quotes, this was punk. It was just well produced punk and
And
written
it
well.
is well produced. This album sounds phenomenal.
Cavallo did an amazing, first of all, he did an amazing job with Green Day. He took what already was a talented band and really put a level, just enough, just enough polish. I listened to this album again recently to prepare for this. It's not polished. It's just polished enough, especially if you listen to their previous albums that sound like they recorded it in a shoebox.
With a boombox.
Yeah, it's
W-
not good.
would you say that Cavallo polished a turd?
No, I'd say he because I don't think they
Because
were
the
a
album's
turd.
called Dookie.
Oh man, I let that go. Whee! Right over me. Well done.
uh,
You know what? That's a good dad joke.
Thank you. I
That was
appreciate
good.
that.
So Cavallo did a couple things for this album. For one thing, he definitely did get their shit together. Ooh, pun intended. But
Uh,
he also, why? Because we're guitar players, right? What do I love about this album? I love the guitar. Okay, so Billy Joe was a I always thought he was playing a Strat, but it's a Strat copy. It's a Fernandez Strat copy.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Always thought it was a Strat too.
Yeah, but apparently the only other Fernandez Strat player was Kirk Hammett back in the day. They sold two guitars, one to Billy, one to Kirk.
Huh.
Anyway, but it had a Bill Lawrence humbucker because they were very popular back then. And
Very powerful.
so for their first two albums, he played that Strat copy into a Galleon Kruger 250 RL head, which not garbage. Iron Maiden used one of them bad boys for a few years.
I think Brian May used one in the studio only
Mhm.
to get specific sounds
Yeah,
as well. It's a solid state
yeah,
amp.
yeah. So not terrible, but definitely not the tone that you think of when you think of punk. So for this album, Armstrong so Billy switched to a JB pickup, a Duncan JB
Okay.
in that Strat copy, and Cavallo had brought in a modded 100-watt Marshall Plexi.
Oh, so lower output pickup and an actual rock and roll amp.
And right, a Plexi 59 SLP, and apparently it had the Bradshaw mod, the the cascading gain mod
Yeah,
that
the
was
sweetener.
popular back in the day, right? So you could that's where all that gain came from. Um, and if you listen to that album, you're like, yeah, I can hear that. I mean, it's just massive.
Yeah.
And you know how many pedals Billy Joe used on this album?
I'm going to guess none.
Yeah, none, zero. It's punk, baby. It was guitar into amp. And when you have a Bradshaw modded Marshall Plexi, do you really need pedals for more gain? I don't think you do.
No, no, you don't.
So, yeah, I mean, I was not the biggest grunge fan. Is this a safe space?
Yeah, go ahead.
We can I okay.
Yeah.
I do like a couple of the bands from the era. Not a big grunge fan. Never was, never got into the whole vibe. Just never wasn't my thing. I like Alice in Chains, but I don't really think they're grunge, but that's a separate
Different
conversation.
discussion.
Um, to me, this album was a very welcome change from what was going on at the time. Like I said, it was fun, it was relatable, it was super chill. No, it was, just heavy guitars, drum. I mean, just everything that I loved about rock music, this album was. And it came out at a time when I think music really needed that breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And if you think about what Dookie did, it spawned, as every great album and every great band will, a slew of copycats. But
Yeah, absolutely.
if you think of the name, I'll name the bands that some of the articles that because I did a little research. Here's some of the bands that are credited that have credited Dookie as being they're the album that brought Blink 182.
Oh, absolutely.
J-
They sound just like Green Day, except a little bit less than.
just like them. Jimmy Eat World,
I
Sum
can see that. Yeah.
41,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fallout Boy.
But Fallout Boy's emo, Andrew. They're sad.
The sad punk. But that's only four bands, but I'm sure there's dozens and dozens and dozens more that were influenced by this album and then you know, took it to a different level.
Yeah.
It started a different thing. By the 2000s, like I do think Dookie introduced, not introduced maybe, I think Dookie influenced what would happen to music in the late 90s, early 2000s.
I'll agree with that.
Like that wave of music, that Blink 182 and Fallout Boy like dominated all those bands at that time started because of Fallout Green Day.
Yeah. You
Honestly,
want to
I really do. I think if it wasn't for Green Day, the 2000s would have been a very different era for music.
Yeah, I'm sure. You want to know what effect Green Day had on me?
Go ahead.
After this album came out, I never played in another band that was 50% covers.
Why is that?
Because after I heard Green Day doing exactly what they wanted to do, I only wanted to do exactly what I wanted to do,
Wow, interesting. I like that.
which was play my music my way.
Wow,
And my stuff did not sound like Green Day, you
doesn't
know,
matter.
and it certainly, it sounded like me. It sounded like my bands,
Hmm.
but other than playing a cover or two during the set, I never again played in a band that did a significant amount of covers.
Hmm. Wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, it was more about my approach to guitar than it was my like for you. I can relate to what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was more about because I think I was still listening to a lot of progressive music, and then this happened, and I'm like, oh, so I don't have to have a guitar solo in every song.
Right.
I still did, but I didn't have to.
Hey, let's not get out of control here.
and and I also felt like less of a music snob. Like I felt like I was able to appreciate music that wasn't loaded with minor seventh chords and
Yeah.
ninth chords and 11th chords. It brought me down a level. Like it reminded me that simple can be great. And it really did change my approach to the instrument and to my playing. Um, Even though I was a big Dream Theater fan during the 90s, I never I still considered Green Day and this album to be one of my bigger influences for rhythm playing at the time. Not my favorite Green Day album because American Idiot came out, and
I've still never heard that album in its
I
entirety. I've
okay,
heard several songs on it.
I cannot recommend it enough. First of all, Green Day's first concept album. You heard me right, concept album. A
Yeah.
punk band did a concept album. It was
Nothing wrong with that.
basically
Good for them.
about it, and here I'm going to shock the crap out of you. It was basically about the Bush administration and how shitty the country was at the time. I know it's
What?
hard to believe that a punk band got political, Wes. I'm sorry. And it's a band called the album called American Idiot. I'm sure you have no idea what they were saying with that. And they were pissed about the war in Afghanistan and the reason we were there, and they wrote an album about it. And it's freaking awesome. I'm sorry. Even if you take the political side away from it, if you just listen to the songs, it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah.
I cannot recommend enough. It's a rock opera, dude. There's a dude, it hit Broadway.
Yeah. Yeah.
American Idiot hit Broadway. A punk band,
And
Green.
that's something.
Can I please say that sentence again? A punk band had an album that turned into a Broadway musical. I'm sorry, there's just no other. That's a big deal, man. It's not like The Who and Tommy.
Right.
You expect Tommy to be a rock opera. That's a different kind of music. Or Pink Floyd with The Wall. You'd almost see that, right? Or Hitler on Ice.
Yeah. Good point.
Sorry. But Green Day, a, a band, a punk band from South California. Dude, it's just, I'm sorry. That's to me, they've achieved, and I'm not saying their albums since American Idiot aren't good. Haven't listened to them as much. Still pretty good. But I think American Idiot's probably my favorite. 21st Century Breakdown's a good album, but American Idiot's my favorite Green Day album. Only because otherwise Dookie's still my favorite because it's still just an absolute banger with every song that slaps.
Yeah. I mean, I listen to Dookie regularly still. But probably my favorite Green Day album is Insomniac, the one that came out after it.
So good.
And I like it. It's got an edgier guitar sound.
Hmm.
It's the lyrics are a lot angrier.
That's right. They got more. They were like, "Screw you."
Yeah, and I think a lot of that came from the claps that they got
Yeah, the gatekeeping.
for going legit. Um, but yeah, I and the one after, I think it's called Nimrod, the one after Insomniac. Those
Hmm.
three albums are on my phone. They're on my computer. They're on a SD card that I keep in my car,
Hmm.
and I tend to listen to them straight through.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
me, it's like one, and of course, because it's Green Day, you take those three albums, you play them end to end, it's like an hour and a half of music. you know.
Right. And even though they do sound like different albums, they're not so drastically different that you can't absorb them in all in one sitting.
Yeah, and they're just fantastic albums. Insomniac is probably my favorite,
That's cool, man.
but I mean, Dookie's a go-to. What I like doing is, I don't know if you can see over my shoulder here. I've got my
Hmm.
half stack, you know. I like to plug in a guitar with a humbucker and put on Dookie and tune to standard and play along.
Yeah.
I know all those songs,
It's
but I only
fun.
know them in context. I can only play the album straight through. Otherwise I have to, like, if you take one of the songs, take like Sassafras Roots. If you say, Wes, play Sassafras Roots, I can't
Can't
do
do
it.
it. But if
But if we play She first, then I can go right into Sassafras Roots.
So a little more Green Day appreciate before I let you go. One of the coolest things was when I realized in watching some videos and watching the interviews that when they did American Idiot, it was the first time I remember seeing Billy Joe not playing his Strat. He was actually playing a Les Paul
Junior.
Junior
Yeah,
with
that's his signature guitar is a Les Paul Junior, a
with right
sparkly.
with what's the pickup, Wes?
It's a P90.
It's P90. He doesn't even use the humbuckers anymore, man. He
Is it a
actually
P90 or a P100?
the P90.
Hold on, let me look. I'm looking at the specs. Yeah,
So
P90 DC hum canceling.
yeah, of course.
So it's technically it's a P100. They just don't call it that anymore.
Gotcha. Anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. Is he, went for something different. He's evolved.
Yeah,
He changes. It's neat.
but
Even a punk musician can grow.
every video I've ever seen of him playing live, he's playing that Strat.
He plays it a lot,
Yeah,
but it's not the sound that he went for, like his more modern sound. He'll be a granddad one day.
yeah, he will.
He's got kids. He does stuff at home with his kids. It's kind of fun watching him be a family man. It's so weird.
Wow, this is so his signature guitar is a Les Paul Junior. You can get it in classic black, but it also comes in silver mist, they call it, sparkly silver.
Mm-hmm.
One pickup, this hum canceling dog ear P90.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Is it a Gibson or an Epiphone?
it's a Gibson.
Okay.
Comes with a hard case. $2,200 new
For a Les Paul Jr. with one pickup.
for a Les Paul Junior with one pickup that says Billy Joe Armstrong on the truss rod
Honestly,
cover.
if it's an American made guitar and you're getting it for less than $3,000,
Yeah, it might be worth it. It might be worth it.
I'm not buying one, but given prices these days in
Let's
this
see.
economy. Oh, sorry.
Epiphone Les Paul Jr. Let's see what theirs is. Epiphone Les Paul Jr. Tobacco Burst, one pickup costs $479.
It's Green Day on a budget. Just replace the pickup, kids.
Yeah. So yeah, you can get into your Green Day ish Les Paul Jr. for about for $600.
You do that, you get yourself a little combo amp, digital combo amp. You're set. You don't need a Marshall with a Bradshaw mod. Just digital it up.
Digitize your life.
Well, so that's it for me, man. I've said as much I can about that banger as I can. What else you got for me?
Dude, I got nothing, man. I love this album. I'm so glad you chose it. A lot of times, a lot of the albums that you've picked before, I had to like go to your playlist so that I could listen to them.
Not
Not
this
one, man.
You know this one.
I did.
You play this one.
Yeah, it was that was a really nice treat to get to talk about an album that I'm so familiar with.
That's cool, man. I had no idea. See, we're bonding over this stuff, man. I didn't know you like Green Day as much as this. That's dope, man.
Yeah, and it's one of those occasions where I probably would not have found this band on my own. My younger brother, who was very into punk at the time, skateboards, the whole nine yards, he was playing this album in his room, and I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. And he said, it's Green Day's new album. And I said, oh, awesome. And I went down to Waxy Maxie's and I bought a copy.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Life changing. And look, and change your whole life, man.
It really did. I cried a little.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I didn't cry.
oh.
But you've really stepped up the challenge, man. I got to come up with a really good album for the next issuance.
I'm sure you'll get one.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide if I'm trying to attract you or repel you with my choice.
Maybe don't come at it like that. Just come up with a good album and let the chips fall where
Let
they
the
may.
chips fall. You got it. Well, until next time, folks, and everybody else, thanks for joining us. Of course, we love it when you listen. We love it more when you converse. So please leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, but talk to us. What's your experience with Green Day's Dookie album? Do you like a Green Day album better, or do you hate Green Day because they sold out and you're still holding a grudge?
Sorry.
Let's hear from you. I want to get the conversation going. And keep in mind, man, you only need 4 strings on your guitar to play almost every Green Day song.
That is true. Even if you break one, you're still good.
That's right. And thanks a bunch. Andrew, on the way out, please tell folks where they can find us on the internet.
differentstringspodcast.com. Please and thank you, and you're welcome.
Another brilliant episode, my friend.
Same to you.
That was
Peace,
a lot
everyone.
of fun.